Hey, what's up? It's Jim and baby Sophie, and today we're going to talk about Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird. Right, Soph? Follow That Bird has always held a special place in my heart because it's actually the first movie I ever saw in theaters. And I've always really wanted to rewatch it when I had a little kid, and I do, so we could. And since she really liked Sesame Street and we'd already seen the Elmo movie, I thought, well, let's watch Follow That Bird. And I was kind of wondering if it would actually hold up after all this time. I'd only seen it once in college in the background while I was working, and I didn't actually like it that much, although that's not a fair comparison for a movie. But it too, when I saw it in 1985, I actually really liked it. And I was kind of hoping it would be good. I know it was kind of an older Sesame Street, and she likes more of the Elmo kind of stuff, and Elmo's not in this at all. But I really liked Follow That Bird, and Sophie really liked it, didn't you, Soph? So I was actually kind of surprised at how good Follow That Bird is, because everything that didn't work about The Adventures of Elmo, it feels like Follow That Bird figured out how to get that to work, whether it was, using an elaborate set that they don't usually use for the TV show Sesame Street to show Sesame Street. The locations were better utilized, the direction was better. I think it's the feature debut of Ken Quops or whatever, who directed a lot of stuff, including The Beautician and the Beast and Dunstan Checks In. Although The Adventures of Elmo and Grouchland was also handled by a television director, Ken Quops seems better at going between TV and film and understanding what works about one medium and the other. And he actually got really well how to make a really good Sesame Street movie. And I think that's the best thing about this, is he understands the difference between the two. And that although I think with Elmo, I was like, what exactly am I learning from this? And Follow That Bird, I'm having such a good time, and we were having such a good time with all the music and everything, that it didn't really bother me or her. We weren't, having the usual kind of Sesame Street thing. We just kind of got into the adventure of the road trip of this. And I also think this film does what Elmo doesn't, in that it's squarely on Big Bird. There are human characters, but they're not overloading it with human characters because they're afraid you'll get bored or the adults will get bored. There's enough good stuff in here. This might also be because this is the last Muppets theatrical film involved of Jim Henson and puppeteer Richard Hunt. Obviously they did Muppets and VHS things after this, but this is the last theatrical thing. The last Muppets film he worked on was Muppets Take Manhattan, and then this came out a year afterwards. And obviously Labyrinth, and there were other films that Jim Henson and Frank Oz and people like that were involved in, but this is the last one that they worked on before Jim Henson's death. Sorry, did you know about that? And I think it shows you have the original creative team there because they knew how to utilize the Muppets. Big Bird has been contacted by the feathered friends that he needs a better home with birds and is sent to live in Illinois from Sesame Street to live with the dodos, and he really doesn't like it. He doesn't like the dodos at all. And so then he decides to leave, but of course since he flew to Illinois on a plane, he thinks it'll take 3 hours to walk back, which is not how planes work. But Big Bird's, optimistic and cute and a 6-year-old, so he thinks things like that. So he tries to travel back and goes on a road trip journey while the rest of Sesame Street tries to go look for him after they know that he has run away from the dodos. And Joe Flattery and Dave Thomas are also looking for him to make him an amusement park feature. I think the road trip thing, obviously, as I talked about in the Elmo movie, and if you notice through various Muppets things, it's kind of like their thing. It's like a travel kind of film is a big feature in a lot of the Muppet stuff. So this is no different from that, but it's a really good riff on it. It didn't feel tired. It didn't feel like they did it a million times before, and I think it really worked for it. And this film was actually well regarded. It got really good reviews at the time. It holds a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, although I don't think that's accurate because not all those reviews were uploaded to Rotten Tomatoes, probably from 1985. And I saw it, and apparently I liked it a lot. My parents said that I liked it as well. I sat in a Sesame Street booster seat because you need a booster seat to go to the movies, although you don't, because everything is stadium seating now, so it's kind of fine for babies. We just put you in a car seat when we've gone for specific baby movies. But this was obviously more of a kid's film, and apparently I liked it. It was actually released on my second birthday, but according to my parents, it was not a birthday present or anything like that, and they didn't know anything about release dates then, so it's just kind of coincidental that it was on my second birthday. I remember really liking it, and I only remember a few things. One, that Big Bird was painted blue, which is like sort of a little darker, but this movie's pretty quick, so it's not gonna like really dwell on that. They want to make sure no one can recognize Big Bird because he's a yellow, obviously, so if they paint him blue, no one will recognize him. And Big Bird running in a pile of hay. Those are the only things I really remember from that theater experience, but that might be just like selective memory or having seen it on VHS, although I don't think I did see it on VHS because the Wikipedia says it wasn't released on VHS till the 90s. If you notice, there's only 2 theatrical Sesame Street films. Neither of them did well. Follow That Bird probably got the best reviews, but it didn't do that well, actually. Despite having a lot going for for it. It actually opened against Fright Night and Weird Science, but also at the same time Back to the Future happened, and a re-release of E.T. But if you're thinking of family movies and you have a choice between E.T. and this, I'm still going to pick E.T. because E.T. is amazing. And then its second week, Pee-wee's Big Adventure came out, which is both a family movie and a road trip movie and a better movie. So it just kind of like swallowed this movie up. It did actually hold on to 9th place for 2 weeks in a row, but it's still 9th place. Yeah, right? Who am I talking? I'm talking. I actually really like this film. The songs from Easy Going to the Waylon Jennings song, Ain't No Road Too Long with Waylon Jennings. We actually liked a lot of the songs, and Sophie was like really more into it than I thought she'd be. This is from 1985, so I thought maybe movies and TV editing wise has changed so much, maybe she won't be as into it, but you were kind of into it, weren't you? So I was worried about that, but I noticed she was more happy with certain sections of this than any of the Elmo movie, which is surprising because you love Elmo, right? Yeah. But Elmo unfortunately wasn't in this, although the puppeteer Kevin Nash did work on this, but unless Elmo was in the background somewhere, Elmo really wasn't a major part of this. Did a lot of interesting puppeteering, including Big Bird walking around America and getting some really beautiful cinematography was really interesting. Bert and Ernie in an airplane. It was actually Jim Henson and I forget who else were actually puppeteering it within a plane, so it was going upside down. Yeah, they really did that. And they did a lot of cool stuff. There were 2 jokes I really like. One with Oscar the Grouch, where they stop at a Grouch restaurant. It was like with this one human from Sesame Street, and Oscar the Grouch, she was like, "Oh, do we have to eat here?" And he's like, "Oh, come on, we had lunch at Friendly's," which is not a good joke, but I enjoyed it. Right, Elmo? And then when Super Grover, who was my favorite at the time, fell into the car that the other people were driving in, I thought was really funny too. It was kind of special to rewatch this. It was the first movie I saw in theaters, so I guess that's sort of a big deal. It actually holds up really well. I'd recommend this for parents who want to see a Sesame Street movie, and obviously there's only one other one. And you'd think Elmo, because like this one loves Elmo, right? Elmo! You'd think that would be the obvious one, but that one really doesn't work as well. It has songs more to focus on the adults in the audience. It's trying to do that too heavily, and this one's just concerned with being a good Sesame Street tale. A little too many references and jokes about can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street, which to be honest got a little annoying. I did like that Joe Flattery and Dave Thomas from SCTV and John Candy are in this. Chevy Chase has a cute little thing is Sesame Street, I guess. And Kermit the Frog is almost featured like a celebrity cameo. It'd be funny if they had him on the poster as a celebrity cameo, but they don't. I don't know if that's a legal thing or something, probably to separate the brands. And Sandra Bernhardt in the Grouch restaurant. And Waylon Jennings was actually really good. Everyone seemed to be really down for this. And Ken Quips actually ended up directing 2 episodes of Freaks and Geeks, which featured Joe Flattery as the dad, interestingly enough. I really like this film. I think it's a cute little kids road movie. It features Cookie Monster and the Count and Bert and Ernie all very well, and like has a good time with it, and ends up utilizing the songs within the plot of the film really well in a really organic way. And having a cool Waylon Jennings song in a kids movie I think is pretty cool. And Easy Going I've been singing ever since. It has great songs. It's a great little Sesame Street movie, and if you're wanting to watch a Sesame Street thing with your kids, and especially one if you're like around my age and you have kids and you remember this film, it'll be one that you can enjoy and go, hey, this is actually like pretty cool. And Sesame Street normally, right, has pretty good quality, but I think this definitely holds up pretty well, and it's an actually pretty good movie. It's unfair that this kind of got forgotten and flopped, but it was made between Muppets Take Manhattan and Labyrinth, and it's kind of like showing like the strength of Henson and company making a theatrical film at probably a period where most people love Muppets Take Manhattan, most people love Labyrinth. I think they do, and you'll get to see both eventually, especially because Bowie's in it. Most people love both those movies, but they kind of forget this one. And if you're a Muppets fan or you're a Jim Henson fan, this is not a bad movie. It's a really fun watch. It has an interesting, good cast. It's cool that they had SCTV people featured so heavily as the villains in this. I mean, that's pretty cool for 1985. So not only is it a cool, fun movie, but it's a really enjoyable little kids film, and I definitely recommend it. I really like to follow that bird anytime I can, and maybe Sophie and I will watch it again because she really likes Easy Going, although I'm not going to sing it here because she's a little into eating Elmo's eyes right now, as you can see. So if you have seen Sesame Street Presents Follow That Bird and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.